I'm Ivy Sheppard. I am an old-time musician and avid 78 RPM record collector and a radio show producer. Gosh, old-time music is the music that moves your heart and makes you feel something. And for me, it's the music of my childhood and my life, and the music that came out of the hills and the hollers and any kind of backwoods place. Well, I mean, women have played a huge part in the early recording of hillbilly and country music. Go back to August 1st, 1927, when the Carter family walked into the studio in Bristol for Victor Records, and Sarah Carter let loose, and the world of country music was forever changed. And to think that women aren't an important part or integral part of that music is just crazy. And they still are. And I feel like in hillbilly music, and I don't know about other genres of music nearly as much, but anybody who had the talent, who could play, who had a voice, who could sell records, they wanted to get behind a microphone to cut a record and be part of the music. And today, in the bluegrass music scene out there, you see, I don't know, there's certainly a large number of prominent women, and I guess maybe there's struggles, but I also think they're celebrated and an important part of the music history and fabric. Well, I mean, I guess I like to say I'm the biggest Carter family fan ever. I have every single Carter family 78 RPM record, and growing up, I went out to the Carter fold and I knew Jeanette. She put me on stage when I was just a kid. And Sarah Carter has always been just somebody whose voice and sound who I've been absolutely drawn to and love and still do. I mean, if I had to pick one group who I would listen to, it would be the original Carter family. Sarah, AP, and Mother Maybelle are just tremendous musicians. And Mother Maybelle's guitar playing is still having an impact on musicians learning how to play the music today. And people out there now, I don't know, so many of the people who I love and cared about have passed on, but I did grow up playing with the Roan Mountain Hilltoppers, and Janice Birchfield was just a tremendous role model and practically my mother, and was always so encouraging and celebrating anybody and everybody who wanted to keep alive that traditional music sound. Yeah, when I was playing with the Roan Mountain Hilltoppers, as I said, Janice and Bill Birchfield, they never made me think, oh, well, it's different, or you're separate or something because you're a girl. Playing with the Hilltoppers, Janice and Bill were always keen to take me to meet all sorts of folks, and both men and women who had been playing on the radio back in the 30s and the 40s. And when I was in college, somebody gave me a cassette tape of women in old time music, and I thought, oh, what's this going to be? And I never really thought about the music like, oh, well, there's a woman in this band or there's a man in that band. It was just the music that I loved, and the music that moved me is what I listened to. And this was mostly Lily Mae Ledford and the Coon Creek Girls, and then also Ola Belle Reed of Lansing, North Carolina. And to be able to see Ola Belle Reed play in concert and hear the music and what they did, I don't know at the time if I thought, oh gosh, it's really cool that those are women doing that. But somehow I guess it did have an impact on me. And it never occurred to me that I couldn't play music or I couldn't do something because of being a female. Yeah, it was one time, and I was fairly young when I saw her, and I loved her singing. In fact, I've Endured is the theme song of my radio show, so it seemed appropriate, and just what a voice. And I think I just got to say hello to her, but I was probably only 7 or 8 years old. Well, unfortunately, most of the women who've inspired me musically were gone long before I was around. But I feel like I've spent a lot of time with them, listening to those records over and over and over again, and they're part of the soundtrack of my life, and I hear those sounds and I hear the way they sang. I love Molly O'Day, and her banjo playing and her singing, and they were just wide open. Or going back and listening to the radio shows where you get to hear these folks, the way that they talked, the way that they were, not just on record, but also as human beings. And they were pretty remarkable people. Yeah, I've never been one to listen to, or to go to the YouTube route. I've usually been sitting right at the feet of the people who I've been playing music with, which I feel super fortunate to have. Played with the Hilltoppers, and Bill Birchfield and I would sit up till the wee hours of the morning, and then he'd tell me, half a pint, you got to go sleep fast. And then we'd be up at 6 a.m. playing again, and Janice, his wife, would fix us breakfast, and that's how I've mostly learned, I guess the Carter family songs, obviously, off record, but most of the playing has just been live and in person. And that's one of the great things about this music, is that you do get welcomed in. You see a group of people playing and they're like, oh, I see your banjo, come on over. Well, I don't know how much of an impact I'll make as a musician myself. I love the music more than anything in the world, but I hope that there'll be maybe some sort of legacy with my radio shows, because I really love being able to share this music and trying to get recordings that haven't been reissued out and to share with the world. Or if we get a tape, for instance, I just got a recording from the Ash Grove, which was out in Los Angeles, and Cousin Emmy was out there playing, and it's a great stage performance, and that's something that unless you had that tape, you'll never hear it. So being able to share that on the radio is a special thing, and it gives people access to music that they might not hear, and being able to keep it alive is the most important thing in the world to me. I guess in playing music, probably the most difficult thing is when we had our band, I did all the booking, all the managing, the whole shooting match, and dealing with some of the promoters, they could definitely be a little bit biased, and you're just like, oh, well, can your husband talk to us or something like that. But mostly, I never had too much trouble. I know once we got on stage, and you have a professional package, and you're doing what you do, nobody's gonna give you a hard time about it. Yeah, I guess this isn't a promoter story, but we always play with a single condenser microphone, and we know how to work it. We know how to use the mic and how to get in and out. And we've been on stage where there've been sound guys who are like, oh, no, you can't do that. And I'll go talk to them, and they just are totally dismissive. But I don't know if that's a gender thing or what. But I have a feeling they wouldn't treat guys that way. I'm like, I know about microphones.
Right.
I know how sound works. Well, I guess if you look at Sally Ann Forrester, she was just a side musician in the band. You don't hear about a lot of the people who played with Monroe, because, there was a parade of musicians. Jimmy Martin, who was a tremendous bluegrass musician and played on some, seminal recordings of Monroe and had a great band in his own right, had a woman play bass for him for many years, who he just absolutely berated and belittled on stage and mocked and made a fool of, called her up to do, we got the girl singer to do one now, and then made barnyard noises behind her while she was singing. And she's just Gloria Bell, and she's just belting it out, killing, traveling the highway home. Why Jimmy's not jumping in and singing harmony with her? It could have been one of the most stunningly great recordings ever. Instead, he's just making a fool of himself. There's actually a recording of it. You can find it. It's awful. And she kills it. She is so good.
Oh my God.
And she played, and why she would put up with it, I don't know. And I think, there's a lot of bands who've I guess a lot of the bluegrass bands, these fellas were out on the road and they were married and their wives were back at home having to take care of the children and keep the families going. And I know those fellas would have had a hard go of it if they hadn't had the women, the unsung heroes, back behind them. And for instance, the band that I played in, the Roan Mountain Hilltoppers, Birchfields, those guys never had the opportunity to go to school. They grew up in a hard knocks existence and really just scrapped to get by and mechanicked. And they were, Bill Birchfield was one of the smartest, most sensitive, beautiful people I've ever met, but he couldn't read or write his own name. And Janice, his wife, is the reason that that band was able to go on the road. She could arrange all the bookings. She could look at the map and figure out where they needed to go. She could do all that business side of things, which is essential to running a band. I mean, I grew up in a reasonably musical house. My great-grandmother had played fiddle. My grandfather was a great singer. And my mother was, like, well, you need to be a little bit more professional. Don't try to play music for a living. But I was always nuts about music. When I was about 4 years old, my parents gave me a little turntable, a little portable one, and they'd set me in the corner, and I would just play records over and over and over again. I played the Jimmie Rodgers and Carter Family and Johnny Horton until they were about ready to, pop my head off, but at least it kept me quiet. And then I started playing banjo. Growing up, on the farm next to us is Alan O'Brien's mama lived, and he was part of the Nashville Bluegrass Band. So whenever he'd come home, he'd bring me his records and always come over and play with me. And just music playing, going to the flea markets, going to fiddlers conventions, being around music was just part of my life. Oh, when I was a kid, my mama said she knew I was awake because she could hear the banjo before my feet hit the floor. I slept in bed with it. And I don't know, when you're out on the road, I love the people we've met and the places we've gone touring, but you do get exhausted. And I won't say it takes the joy out of it, but it changes it. These kids would hear their mamas singing these songs. And it was when the daddies were at work and they were said, do not touch that banjo, don't touch that fiddle. Mama wasn't going to tell them not to do it. In fact, she kind of was proud of them when they did pick it up. So I think that the women in the family must have been huge role models and important figures in these people learning how to play music. And also go to church. There used to be, community singings. I think that was a great way of entertainment, and it worries me sometimes now with all of our technology, and we all got phones and we all got computers, that we don't interact with each other in the same way. You don't just think, oh, let's just go get together with our friends and sit and play music all night, because that's how the folk tradition exists and thrives and stays alive and changes. It's a really tricky subject. There's this whole crew of kids graduating from Berkeley who were tremendous hotshot musicians, and they can play all the old fiddle tunes and they can listen to the recordings and play them note for note, bar for bar, lick for lick. But are they really playing traditional music? Is it just because you can copy it, is that really what it is? I think when people were isolated and they came from a place and a time, and also think that basically our lives have gotten too easy. I think a lot of that sound will never happen again. And there's something special. I'm a nut about gospel music. And the stuff that came out of the coal fields is some of the most haunting, amazing music that will ever have been recorded. And I just don't think that sound's going to come back around. Yeah. I mean, maybe our lives will change and it will come back. And the folk process, I don't think it ever dies. But where it's going, I don't know. If you haven't lived it, they just think about how common it was for, people to have babies and then not make it, or, daddy goes in the mine and he doesn't come back, or he comes back without a leg, or just the subsistent kind of living, not knowing where your next meal was going to come from. It was a real struggle. And we don't know that. We got it pretty darn good. Yeah. Think about, the Stonemans. That I mean, Ernest Stoneman had what, 18 kids, I think. They said 22 is the number that they.
And they didn't all live to adulthood. Yeah.
But those kids grew up with absolutely nothing. But look at the musicianship of that family: Scotty Stoneman and Donna and Ronnie Stoneman and all of them. When they had the Bluegrass Champs, they were a fantastic band on television in D.C. I mean, you still hear about people talking about Donna Stoneman playing the mandolin and dancing. And yeah. I mean, I think that was one of the beauties of the music, is that if you went to Western North Carolina, they would play a tune, let's just say Sally Ann, a different way than if you go to Surrey County, North Carolina, where Mount Airy and that Galax region is a real hotbed of old-time music, but it's its own style unto itself. Whereas if you come over to where Wade Maynor was playing, J.E., or you go over to Roan Mountain, East Tennessee, there was just a different style of the music. And then going to Kentucky, and it was a whole nother world. And I think that you could tell somebody would pull a bow and you would hear the way that they played, and you would go, oh, he's probably from around Laurel Bloomery. And that's something that is definitely, we're quickly losing it. There's only a few players who I say really play in the traditional styles of their region anymore, because everybody's playing together. I know when I was playing with the Hilltoppers, Bill would say to me, now, Half Pint, don't go play over there with Richard Bowman or with the White Top Mountain Band. You know, we don't want you to start playing the way they are. We want you to have our sound. And they were really proud of it and aware of it. And I think it's also great for everybody to get together and play, of course, but it does have an impact. Just like, you know, people used to have real defined accents based on where they were from. Now you turn on the radio or the television and everybody sounds the same. We can't, you know, the cotton mill colic, the mills are virtually gone now. People are still mining, people are still working in mills, but it's not the kind of existence where you don't know if you're going to come out of it at the end of the day. It's just a totally different world, and we can sing those songs, but what do they really mean? Oh God, old time music it was a celebration of the high points in life. Going to a Saturday night dance, it also got the depth and the feeling and the religiosity of Sunday morning church, be it from the regular Baptist, you know, kind of lined out style of singing, or just the great old gospel numbers that we all know from the hymn books. That was a huge part of it. And then it was, you know, documenting what was going on in the world. Was it the cyclone of Rye Cove? And putting that into song, so it was immortalized, or something about the sinking of the Titanic, or, you know, no telephone in heaven, and you hear about the mama dying and how daddy's struggling and the children miss her and there's nothing you can do. So I think it was a reflection of the time in life and the sorrows and the joys. Yeah, I mean, so the gospel music is hugely important to me, and a major part of my life, playing music on the road, and also in my radio shows there's always hymn time, and trying to find these recordings of people playing who've got something that moves me is my main goal. And there's a great group, the Cook Duet, who were out of Wise, Virginia. In fact, they're now the Cook family, I think the Cook family singers, they're still playing music on the road, but Jeanette Cook has one of the most soulful, amazing voices that just cuts right through you of any person I've ever heard. And there's all these little groups who played up around Southwest Virginia, like the Clinch Valley Gospel Singers, who were from Richland, Virginia, and it was two reverends and their wives. And I'm sure they had radio shows and just went probably to revivals and sold their records. And the women are certainly a important part of that music. And I've never really thought about it being I guess I've always thought of it as being a really inclusive thing. If you go back to the sacred harp singing, it's the women's voices in a lot of ways that really make the sound of some of those records. And it's, you go to church and everybody's voice is together. Because it's the most important thing in the whole wide world. Now, I mean, old time music, traditional music, to me is what makes me wake up in the morning. I love it. It's my heart. It's my life, and I can't imagine the world without it. And it also tells a lot about where we came from. You know, as an avid historian, it's a great way to get a sense of how people lived. As I guess if you were a sociologist or an anthropologist or something, you could really get a lot of information by digging through the words and the sounds of the old records. It's just, I don't know. I've always, my mother always told me I was an alien. She said, I don't know where you came from, but I've never really felt a part of the time and the place that I live in. So it feels like it takes me into some sort of world that makes more sense to me. I like the simpler way of being, and just the music speaks to me.